DID really does exist, and the reason why people have so much trouble with it is because it's so hard to believe the level of trauma and abuse that was done to a person as a child, and it's so hard to absorb that. But if you then say, okay, yes, we accept that this happened, we're admitting, yes, it's real and it does happen, the issue then becomes, what do you do? Because people don't know what to do. They don't know what to say. They don't know how to talk to someone that's had that much trauma.
Sarah Desjardins, to all outward appearances, is an engaging, highly intelligent, well-adjusted, and successful woman. No one, not even Sarah herself, could have imagined the horrific childhood abuses that led to the development of a coping mechanism called dissociative identity disorder, commonly known as multiple personalities. Coming face to face with dissociative identity disorder this week on My Healthy Mind. Let's talk about it. Welcome to My Healthy Mind. I'm Michael Hunter. For most of us, the term multiple personalities conjures up frightening movie images of volatile, often violent personalities, battling it out in the mind for the dominance of one body. In these sensationalized accounts, the tormented individual is frequently unaware of some or all of these alter egos and may be portrayed as irrational, even threatening. Sarah Desjardins is none of these things. Though subjected to unrelenting abuse in childhood, she is an accurate living portrait of what this mysterious fracturing of the mind looks like.
People that have DID hide it, and so I really believe that it's very underreported. And sexual abuse especially is very underreported because it's very shame-based and people don't want anyone to know. So they hide it. So I think the statistics are much lower than what is actually real and true.
Symptoms of DID would be the sensation of not being in yourself, maybe being stepped back and someone else operating things in front of you, having a feeling of separateness that you're not in charge. A lot of times DID has a whole host of other kind of sub-symptom categories like depression and anxiety and eating disorders that are part of the distinct personalities or even the core person that can develop that are really more symptoms of being a trauma survivor.
Today, DID continues to be largely misunderstood and sometimes controversial. My colleague Elizabeth Atkins will be speaking with Sarah Desjardins, who shares with us her long, frightening struggle with abuse and coming face to face with what is now called dissociative identity disorder.
Sarah, welcome to My Healthy Mind.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Please tell us about yourself from the beginning, where you're from, your childhood.
I was adopted into a family in which I had siblings, and it was a very well-educated home. One of my parents was a professor and had a PhD, and the other parent was a teacher with a master's degree, and I grew up on a nice suburban street in a middle-class neighborhood, and I went to good schools growing up, and I, as far as I knew, there were certain things that had happened in my childhood that I was aware of, but definitely not the whole totality of what really was going on. Mm-hmm. But as a teenager, I did start developing anorexia and bulimia, which I had for years and years.
So when did you first begin to recall the abuse and trauma that you experienced as a child?
Well, I had abuse that I remembered with one particular person, and that was something I was conscious of, and I thought that was the extent of what had happened to me, and that was traumatizing in itself for me, and it took me a while to go through working that out. And I had seen a therapist in my mid-20s and worked on that for a while. But it wasn't until probably about 8.5 years ago that I really was starting to get the full brunt of the information about what was really done to me.
Let's just do an overview. You're a child being abused, traumatized by your primary caregivers, and you're repressing the pain and emotional angst of that, correct? And the DID develops to help you cope?
Yes, DID actually is a very ingenious coping mechanism. It is a defense response to help you be unaware of what's happening to you, because your brain as a child, there is no way you are going to be able to sustain handling the degree of what is being done to you and then function in your everyday life.
So when did you become aware that these alternate personalities were there helping you?
I was starting to have flashbacks of abuse that I did not remember, which was much more violent than what I had remembered consciously growing up. And so I went and started therapy, and pretty much within a few sessions, things started occurring. I ended up writing a letter to my therapist as a small child with small handwriting, and it was very specific about the way that I wrote it, and it was like cursive writing of a small child that was learning how to write cursively. Mm-hmm. And I just went with it. I thought maybe it was my inner child that was expressing itself. But pretty soon after that, that person took on a much more distinct energy and feeling, like they were a real person. And I could see them in my mind's eye as a real person. And then another one had shown up, and that was a little bit more, I couldn't put that together. You have two inner childs. It didn't really seem to make a lot of sense. And so pretty rapidly after that, my therapist had said, how many are there? And that's when I really started putting together, if I really looked, there were quite a few. And so that was the first realization that I probably had dissociative identity. However, it really, to me, the absorption of that really is a whole process in itself. And that is one of the challenges with DID. When you have DID or you're being diagnosed with DID, is absorbing that you have it, because it's not even that the personalities are there, it's the reason why they're there.
Stress, depression, and severe mental illness can happen to anyone. Team Mental Health Services has been helping those struggling with these conditions in southeastern Michigan. Within 24 hours of reaching out to our team, members receive psychiatric evaluations and begin the necessary treatment for recovery. Team Mental Health Services, because we care and you can.
And that's one of the issues with DID. With my people, they'd say, we don't understand. Why didn't anyone rescue us? Why was no one there? We were 15 feet away from another home. How could they not know that this was going on?
So DID develops when a child is in a situation where they are experiencing trauma from the hands of people that they rely on to be their caregivers. So children rely on their primary caregivers to feed them and take care of them and essentially keep them alive. And when they realize that there is a high level of abuse also coming from that primary caregiver, oftentimes what happens, if in a brain that's developed enough and intelligent enough to do so, they will develop a distinct personality to manage that situation. And depending on how many traumas and the level of atrocities going on, there may be more and more and more personalities develop to manage all these different scenarios so that the core person can go through their day not being aware of these horrible things that these primary caregivers have done to that child. They can maintain a relationship that looks normal with that caregiver. They can hide the abuse for the family, which is a requirement in that system. And then these personalities exist to take the abuse and distribute the abuse among themselves and protect the core person from the abuse.
Welcome back to My Healthy Mind. Today we're talking with Sarah, who shares her long, painful struggle with dissociative identity disorder and what it took to come face to face with it.
So what does it feel like on a day-to-day basis to have DID? When you wake up in the morning, you go through your day.
I have what's called total co-consciousness, and that means that I, Sarah, as the core person, am completely aware of my people. I don't lose time. What it feels like to have DID, for me, is you feel like a completely different person has stepped in front of you, and you feel then how that person feels. So if they are a small child that is 5 years old, you feel like you are 5 years old. It's an odd sensation, I would say, because you can have more than one person out at the same time. And that's normal because I had to have more people out while a trauma was going on, because what happens when you have DID is you have people that are coming out to take over for you, and the impact of what's coming at you is so intense. The more people that you have handling it, it fans out the impact of it. And so it actually gets spread amongst a group of people. And it lessens the trauma that's coming in and separates it more.
Can you explain what it feels like to have, is it voices? Do you see things? How do they reveal themselves to you?
I could see distinctly what they look like, and they did not look like me. They looked like a completely different person. And I knew what was coming and what they were going to reveal to me it was not going to be good. And I really didn't want to know what they were going to show me, because I knew what they were going to reveal was going to be horrific, which it was.
So you believed it? You didn't think it was a bad dream or?
You know, I had challenges believing it because I didn't remember it. And my people, I refer to them as my people, not as alters. I think that alter, for me at least, is very impersonal. Okay. And so I don't care to call them that. And other people with DID do refer to their people as, they might use a unique word for themselves and how to describe them.
So did they ever say why they wanted you to remember this, not keep it repressed, because that was helping you cope?
I think at the time that it was coming out, I knew that there was something going on. Like I said, I was having flashbacks. I could feel some changes in my body. Your body generally, it stores what has happened to you. And a lot of times that's how I would know that a new memory was coming out, was because I started having body symptoms first. And then I knew a new memory was starting to surface. And generally for me, that's how I had information that something new was about to come out, and I was not happy with that because I knew it meant some other heinous act was going to be shown to me that was done by people that I couldn't even conceive that they were doing this to me.
So let's talk about the secrecy and how you must have been so consumed by devoting energy to keeping the secrets. What was that like?
Well, I really wouldn't have been out for a lot of that because my people were out housing the secrets for me. But I know I was aware of some sexual abuse that had happened to me, and I know that I was not to talk about it. And everything in that family definitely was about looking appropriate and pretending. But the secrets that you hold are devastating and isolating because you can never share anything that has happened with you. So therefore, you can never receive comfort and you are completely alone in all of the levels of trauma that have happened to you, you cannot go and say have something that you were sexually abused or tortured. You do not have the avenue to go to a family member and sit in someone's lap and have someone rock you and say, you're safe now, it's done, it's over. You have no luxury like that. It doesn't occur. You are your comfort system.
Fear, shame, and horror. Just a few of the reasons that dissociative identity disorder is only beginning to be understood. How many of us want to admit that the kinds of unimaginable abuse that led to DID can really be happening to children? And Hollywood hasn't helped. Please stay tuned. Welcome to My Healthy Mind,
A show that dares to talk about mental health matters that touch nearly every family. Each week you'll meet guests who share their stories, hear from local experts, and learn about resources that may help.
And so I was in a committee meeting at the House of Representatives when I realized that my daughter had autism.
We need to take the stigma away from mental health issues.
No topics about mental health and wellness are off limits on our show.
Let's talk about it on My Healthy Mind.
I would say that the thing that I would want people to know about DID is that these are lovely people. The core person is often a very wonderful person. I've met many people with DID, and contrary to what's in the media, people with DID, their people tend to be sweet. If anything, they're afraid of hurting people's feelings. There might be some that hold anger, but they're rarely violent in my experience. I've never felt afraid with someone with DID, and I spent a lot of time with different people with DID. I felt deeply sad, but not afraid. And I think that's important for people to understand. I also would say that I think that society as a whole needs to provide more care for people with trauma. And there need to be places for people to go, especially people with DID, especially because often the abuse has happened in the family system. And so what that means is that the person who's recovering from trauma, when they choose to take this road of hope to heal these people, they need support, and they often don't have a family system to support them. So we have these people that are trying to do this alone. And they often have to cut off from families of origin to heal, because that's where the suffering happened. And when someone is cut off from their family of origin, they've cut themselves off from a lot of resources that everybody else relies on to get through tough times. So our society needs to step in and provide places for healing for people that are trying to do this, so that they can let go of these people that aren't good for them and heal these things.
We're back on My Healthy Mind, looking into dissociative identity disorder, why it exists in the first place, and how to live successfully with it as an adult. Elizabeth Atkins continues with Sarah, who shares her experience of living with this disorder.
Please help us understand how you co-manage the people so that you can function.
That's a good way to put it, co-managing it, because I do. I'm a therapist. I'm the person that's in charge, and I have to tell them, no, you can't come out right now, or you need to go further back. And some of them say, no, it's my turn. I want to be out. And for me, it's exhausting because I have to manage all of these people by myself. I don't have people helping me. And that actually is one of the reasons why I'm creating a place that will help people in their stages of healing and recovery, because it's so energetically demanding.
So did you begin some sort of treatment, and what was that treatment?
The treatment that I had for DID is having the memories come out and then talking. A lot of it is talking, because my personalities were there to take over for me when I could not be present because what was happening was too traumatic, and they never had anyone validate their experience. And so for DID, it's so important that people that their people get to talk about what happened to them and have people actively be present and listening, because you so badly need someone to hear your story of what happened, and that is key. So having support groups, which really there's not enough of at all, to have supportive people that can listen, which is challenging in itself, because people are then being traumatized with what you're sharing with them, because it's so intense and heinous what was done to you. They're having trouble listening to it. And so, but it's so needed for your people to tell their story and share what happened, and have somebody understand their fear levels and why their body hurts and why they're acting this way, and people to say, I'm so sorry. And they need actually to see that people are reacting and saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe someone did that to you. You know, I would have gone in there had I known and just picked you up and taken you out because you so badly needed to be rescued. And that never occurred.
So how are you creating a support system and a comfort zone for people?
What I am doing is I have a farm, and I am in the process of creating a nonprofit center that will help people on their journey to healing and recovery from extreme trauma, and especially DID. It will have a lot of different types of creative therapy, because people that have DID are extremely creative people. You have to have a high level of creativity to actually have a system that you like DID. And so their healing is helped greatly by having animal therapy, having music therapy, having laugh therapy, having anger expression therapy to help people actually express the anger they have. Because for a lot of people, if you express your anger, it wasn't safe to be angry. You had to hide all of it. And so you have to help people along with allowing anger to come out and not feeling like you're the same as a perpetrator that was hurting you. You actually are angry for a good reason. We will have garden therapy, because I think it's very important for people to be walking in a beautiful setting and where you feel safe in nature, because you need to know that you're surrounded with beings that are not going to hurt you, and you get to enjoy something when you're in the throes of feeling suicidal, which is very common for people that have DID, and I myself have had many, many times where you just want out because it's so painful and you don't know if it's worth it, if you should just check out, because you're being bombarded by so much trauma and the emotions that come out with what's happened to you. It's so hard to sustain, especially when you don't have enough help.
So how did you survive that?
Your will. It's your will to survive. And I would say people with DID have a very high level of wanting to be here. And that's why one of the reasons why they have DID, because they want to be here.
Let's go to your diagnosis. Tell us how you felt. Were you relieved? Did it explain what was going on with you? Were you resistant, denial?
I think it helped me make a lot of sense of how I felt. And so finally more pieces of the puzzle were being put together. And it was a relief in a way, because now all of the feelings that I had, I wasn't having them for no reason. They weren't random. They all made sense. And the level of lack of self-esteem that I had, and how I hated myself, and I thought I was making something out of nothing, and I thought my life finally just had flow to it, and now, because all these pieces were put together correctly, my life now makes complete sense, and that's a total relief.
Stress, depression, and severe mental illness can happen to anyone. Team Mental Health Services has been helping those struggling with these conditions in southeastern Michigan. Within 24 hours of reaching out to our team, members receive psychiatric evaluations and begin the necessary treatment for recovery. Team Mental Health Services, because we care And you can.
Elizabeth, what an incredible and fascinating story. I mean, it is disturbing when you consider that children have to suffer so much abuse, but when you realize that they're still full of hope and triumph and understanding, that's when you know it's all worth it.
Absolutely. And having Sarah on our show is such a wonderful, courageous, and inspiring example of triumphing over DID is very, very informative and empowering for our viewers.
And I have to admit that I was a little jaded by Hollywood as well, you know, vilifying the persons with multiple personalities or DID. But because of today, I think I've learned a whole lot.
I did too. And for people who struggle with dissociative identity disorder, coming face to face with it, not only the diagnosis, but having to relive the terror of the past can be very disturbing. But it's great to see that for them to get a proper diagnosis and proper treatment, the disorder can be managed and healed.
Absolutely.
To help you in your quest for mental wellness, we've put information and resources on our website, myhealthymind.com. Please take a look. Visiting myhealthymind.com could be an excellent first step to coming face to face with DID.
And we'd like to hear from you about the topics you'd like us to discuss on My Healthy Mind. I mean the tough topics that are so important to talk about openly so that we can remove the barriers on the path to well-being. So reach out to us on our Twitter account at My Healthy Mind, on Facebook, or on our website at myhealthymind.com.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week for another edition of My Healthy Mind. Let's talk about it. Now we'll leave you with My Healthy Minute.
My Healthy Minute, covering breaking mental health news, legislation, discoveries, and resources.
NAMI is the National Alliance on Mental Illness, the nation's largest grassroots mental health organization dedicated to building better lives for the millions of Americans affected by mental illness, including children with serious emotional disorders, through education, advocacy, and research. NAMI Michigan connects national resources with local affiliate passion and action. We connect affiliate, family, and consumer involvement to influence public policy at the state level. NAMI wants you to know, don't be afraid if you or someone you know needs help. Diagnosis is the first step, but knowing your own preferences and goals is also important. Treatment for mental illnesses vary by person and by diagnosis. There is no one-size-fits-all treatment. Treatment options can include medication, therapy, social supports, and education. Remember, the first step to getting help is to say it out loud. You are not alone. We are here to help. Let's talk about it.